Kornhauser.
And I'm Sam Teets.
Thank you guys for tuning in for another edition of the NFL Draft Show here on The Grueling Truth, where legends speak. I want to start off by letting you guys know we're brought to you by betting.net. Betting.net is your best bet for sportsbook and casino sites. Head on over to betting.net. Now, we do this show every Monday, and we didn't do it last Monday because yours truly was still in Vegas post-draft. Living it up out there, making wonderful decisions and having all sorts of fun. And Monday, actually, I was traveling back Monday night. So Monday, I was enjoying the last part of my day, whatever, and then hit the old dusty trail. And it was dusty out there. Believe me, it was really dry. It was a good heat, but you know what? I could wait for a little while to go back to Vegas. As much fun as it was, just dry. But anyway, this is not about my Vegas trip, which was amazing. Went to the draft. Crazy experience. Met a lot of cool people. Had a chance to interview pretty much all of the players that were in attendance at the draft, with the exception of, I think, Nakobe Dean and I want to say Breece Hall, maybe one other player. Oh, and Malik Willis. Those were the three guys I couldn't interview because
so guys who didn't go in the first round, essentially.
Pretty much. And here we go. Yes, Joseph Michael, I made it back from Las Vegas. I'm here, alive and well. Thank you for tuning in, as always. As you see in the back here, we got Derek ready to make an appearance whenever I get disgusted. So, listen, let's jump right into it, all right? We didn't get to do our show last week reviewing everything that went down, and it was a crazy fun draft. I'm ready to jump into it. Sam, are you ready to break this shit down?
Yeah, I'm all set.
Let's do it, boy. All right. Number one, I'm so happy you're wearing a different hoodie today. I'm very pleased. I actually
changed it with the thought in mind of this show. I was like, I got to take the yellow hoodie off and put on a black one just for the show.
I'm going to have to go back and see, but I feel like this might be like the first or second time, maybe the second time you've actually worn a different hoodie for the show. I'm very happy. I'm very, very pleased.
Yeah, it's a rare occasion.
All right, so let's jump right into it, all right? Let's jump into it with our winners of this year's 2022 NFL Draft. Sam, we're going to ping pong this. Give me your first winner of the weekend.
I mean, it's got to be the Kansas City Chiefs, right? Because they traded Tyreek Hill, which is a decision that I will never agree with, probably. Because if you get one more year at Tyreek Hill versus whatever you got in the draft, probably one more year of Tyreek Hill is probably worth more. But that being said, looking at what they got for this entire draft class, at least on my big board, they got value on almost every pick. It took Brian Cook, the safety from Cincinnati, a little bit early when they took him at 62. But I think every other player up until the 7th round was a plus value guy. I mean, Trent McDuffie at 21, he was 12th on my board. Karlaftis at 30 was 10th on my board. Sky Moore, it's just the perfect pick for Kansas City. That people were talking about them taking him in the first round. They get him so late in the second round at 54. He was 29 on my board. And then we talk about Brian Cook. Will Chanel from Wisconsin at 103. Joshua Williams at 135. Darian Kinnard at 145. It was just probably everything you could have asked for if you're the Kansas City Chiefs. That is actually probably going to be my top draft class from this entire event.
Listen, I don't mind at all what the Kansas City Chiefs did. I think they hit on a lot of these picks. I love that patient waited for a guy like George Karlaftis to drop to him at 30th overall. That was a huge steal. I had him at 15th on my board. If he dropped into 21 was a huge win. We were talking about him possibly going as high as number 11 or 12 overall when we were talking about this pre-draft. But I think those two picks were huge wins. Sky Moore, a typical pick that a good team makes in the draft, a talent that was a potential late first-round pick in some people's eyes, and drops to them in the second round. He fits like a glove. And I like what the Kansas City Chiefs have done this offseason overall. Like you said, I can't really get on board with trading a guy like Tyreek Hill, but if you're not going to pay him and you're going to lose him anyway, they did what all these other teams are doing this offseason with the receivers, like Devontae Adams, like A.J. Brown, who we'll discuss in a little bit. These teams aren't going to pay these receivers, so they trade them and they get a nice little haul back. And all things considered, would you rather have a Tyreek Hill? Obviously. Everyone would say yes. But Juju Smith, Marquez Valdez-Scantling look a little better now when you also sprinkle in Sky Moore. And Sky Moore could really make some noise as a rookie. So the Kansas City Chiefs, I like what they did as well. I'm going to go with my winner. I think this one is one of the obvious ones of the weekend. And I'm going to go with the New York Jets. They made all their picks before the 118th pick. Their last one was pick 117 in the 4th round. And I love every single one of these picks. I could nitpick with like the Jeremy Ruckert pick, and I could nitpick with the Michael Clemens pick, but honestly, they both fell within a range, and I'm comfortable on my big board. And obviously, their top 4 picks are what really made this class. We're talking about number 4 overall, Sauce Gardner, who, by the way, is a soft-spoken guy, but when we were in the interview room and whatnot, he's actually pretty entertaining. And at one point, one of the reporters asked him, was like, yo, so Sauce, at some point, when is too much sauce? When do you get too much sauce? And he's like, nah, you know what? There's no such thing as too much sauce. You can never have too much sauce. And of course, that made everybody laugh. And I was recording the interview, and I laughed like an idiot. You could hear me just bursting out LOLing in real life. But I think he's going to do really well with the New York media. Garrett Wilson, another one soft-spoken, but sure himself as well, went 10th overall, receiver from Ohio State. So you got those 2 picks obviously were big gets, but trading back up for Jermaine Johnson after he fell down to the 26th pick, the edge rusher from Florida. He was a top 15 prospect on many boards, mine included. And at one point, there was a possibility that he could have gone in the top 10 earlier in the offseason and during the pre-draft process. But getting him at 26 is a huge win. Trading up to get Breece Hall at 36 overall. Apparently, they were trying to trade up to the end of the 1st round to get Hall because they didn't think he was going to drop to them in the 2nd round. But they were lucky. He did. They trade up to 36 to get him. And this class nets them at the very least 3 first-year starters in Gardner, Wilson, and Hall. Johnson should at the very least be a rotational guy early on, with the very strong possibility of taking over on the edge as the season goes on, because as of now, they are running their own variation of a 4-3 front. But they have 3 defensive tackles on that front line as of now. So I'm sure on running downs, they'll run out with that. Franklin Myers, Quinton Williams, Sheldon Rankins, and Carl Lawson. But on passing downs, they're going to trot out Jermaine Johnson on the edge, and that's going to be a nice front 4. And I love the fact that they got Hall. He should start right away. Rucker was a solid pick at tight end. Max Mitchell falling to the 4th round was a huge win. I had him at 61 on my big board. He goes 111th. And then the Michael Clemens pick, another solid rotational piece for this front line. They needed to add to the defensive line, particularly on the edge, and they did. A+ for the Jets this whole way.
Yeah, when you look at someone like Michael Clemens, who I think is a really nice piece in this draft class because he physically has the traits to go out there and be a guy who can contribute from year 1 and go forward. I think he's been an older prospect. I know he had, I think, an arrest dating back to August of 2021, but assuming that all checks out, on paper and watching him on tape, he's one of those guys who falls into that early day 3, late day 2 tier of guys who can really go out there and make an impact as a rookie and develop into potentially being a star down the line. So I really like that pickup with their final selection. And Jeremy Ruckert. Like, Jeremy Ruckert's not a guy who I think this team really needed based on the tight ends they've added. But I think he's a really solid player, one of my favorite tight ends in this draft class. So I can get on board with that, certainly. Max Mitchell from Louisiana is a guy who I have significantly lower down my board than you do. The Jets reached for him compared to on my board. They reached for him. I had him lower than that, but okay. I think that's mostly because of strength concerns. You watch his playing strength at the Senior Bowl and throughout his time in college. He is one of the most experienced players in football, and because of that, he's going to be ready. He's going to be able to contribute from day one. It's just a question will be physically ready. He mentally will be there for sure because he's one of the most experienced players in this entire draft class.
Assuming Mekhi Becton starts at one of the tackle spots, which is a fair assumption because aside from Mitchell, the Jets didn't do anything on the offensive line over the weekend. Assuming Becton starts, let's say, at right tackle, it looks like George Fant is the favorite right now to start at left tackle. Fant's nobody special, so there's no reason why Max Mitchell start at some point later on in the season. As you said, as long as the strength is up to snuff. Before we move on, we have another comment here from one of our favorites over on the NFL Pick'em show that we do every Wednesday with my good pal Grizzly. Horace Countryman Holmes, blessings. I am sure Sports Jamaica, and that's one of the guys who tunes in. They got their own radio show, their own podcasting show, and I know they're huge fans of the Wednesday NFL Pick'em. So thank you, Horace, for tuning in. And before we continue, I do want to remind you guys that your top sportsbook comparison site is betting.net. Betting.net offers extensive reviews on the best sportsbooks out there, so head on over to betting.net. Now, Sam, give me another winner of yours over the weekend, because there were a lot of teams that did a lot of good things. So give me another winner here.
Yeah, and I hate to do this, but it's got to be the Baltimore Ravens, right? I mean, Baltimore, as much as I disliked the Ravens for a number of reasons, primarily being a Steelers fan, I have to absolutely respect everything they've done through this draft class. Because really, I mean, taking a center and safety at the top of the draft in the first round, you think that's kind of crazy. But when you think about how they walked into the draft having just one first-round pick and somehow doubled that up and got the top safety and the top center and potentially the top interior offensive lineman overall in this entire draft class in the first round, I think that speaks quite a bit to what they were able to do. And then you go and get David Ojabo, who just falls to them at 45, because Baltimore's a team that just loves to get the guys who just fall to them consistently. They always had talent easily in the second round and third round just because it happens and because they have guys just fall to them. It happens with Travis Jones again in the third round, where you got a guy who some people were mocking as potential first-round pick very late in this draft process, who somehow gets to the third round, and really, he's probably not that much lower of an upside guy than Jordan Davis, who got traded. The Philadelphia Eagles traded up for, and you get Travis Jones follows them in the third round. Daniel Falele, a player who I don't really like, offensive tackle from Minnesota, I think has more of like falafel, who has guard agility, guard feet almost to some extent, but tries to play tackle and only has tackle size. That being said, if he's going to succeed in the NFL, it's going to be in Baltimore. It's going to be in that running scheme. That just makes too much sense for him to get to them in the fourth round. Then you get Jalen Armour-Davis, a guy who was really good for Alabama this past year, but only has one season of starting snaps, so we'll see how he develops. And then double up tight end with Charlie Kolar and Isaiah Likely, two very different tight ends. Jordan Stout is arguably the best punter in this draft. They got him as well. They reached for Damian Williams at cornerback from Houston, but at that point, you have 6 fourth-round picks. I mean, who gives a darn about the final one there? You can do what you want as long as you like the guy. And Tyler Batty from Missouri, a player who I actually like quite a bit. He's a bit undersized, but other than that, I think he runs really well. He actually broke a lot of tackles this past year, and they get him as well. And they needed that because they had all their running backs get hurt this past year. You never know with those kind of injuries. But just overall,
Literally all the
I don't think it's an A-plus level draft because, yeah, they had a lot of issues. I don't think it's the top draft class because they did reach for some guys in the fourth round. But, I mean, I trust Baltimore and that coaching staff and that front office. They know what they're doing. And they got a lot of value players. The guys just dropping them, and they were like, "Okay, fine, we'll take him."
Now, I couldn't agree with you more. I love what Baltimore did here, and I'm with you. I don't know if I can consider them, one of the A-pluses or anything like that. But we're kind of reaching because it was a great class, and it's hard to really shit the bed on the draft class like this when you have 6 fourth-round picks and 2 first-rounders. But like you said, man, they really did well on all their fronts. They got a starting caliber safety, maybe the best prospect, a starting center, a starting edge rusher opposite last year's first-round pick, OY. Jones and Falele and Armour-Davis should all play solid backup roles this season because the Ravens are another team besides running backs. Their offensive tackles, particularly their left tackle, seems to get hurt every single season, Stanley. And my only question with the Ravens, getting 2 tight ends, they have 4 legitimate tight ends on the roster. My only question is, they traded Marquise Brown to the Arizona Cardinals pretty much for the second first-round pick that they got this year. And that is a huge win for the Ravens. I wouldn't have traded any more than maybe a 3rd or a 4th for Brown if I'm literally any other team besides the Cardinals. The Cardinals, I don't know what they were doing. I guess
now they have to pay him.
Now they have to pay him, and I guess that just shows how they felt about this draft class, or at the very least the position of receiver at that point once all these other receivers came off the board. But before we move on, and I give you my next winner, We have Greg Gorecki here, and he says, "Hey Sam, how did you feel your Steelers did in the draft? And of course, my Browns." So Sam, we know, it's established on the show you are a Steelers fan. We are talking about the Ravens. Might as well stay in the division. Tell us your thoughts on your Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm so excited for this.
I heard ahead of time they were taking a quarterback. I didn't know who they were taking a quarterback, but I heard they're taking a quarterback. So my immediate reaction was, all right, it's going to happen. Because we've been talking about Malik Willis going to Pittsburgh for however long. And it felt locked in on draft night. So I was like, all right, it's going to happen. You know what? I'm fine with this. As long as it's not any of the other quarterbacks, I'm willing to accept this. And then it was Kenny Pickett. And I immediately was somewhat disappointed by the pick just because I don't think it fits where Pittsburgh is as an organization. I think, like, if I was grading that pick individually, it's probably just a B. I mean, it's not a big deal. Like, I'm not losing my mind over it, but at the same time, this dude is going to play behind an offensive line that has 2 backup caliber tackles, one of which you're paying a lot of money. The other was a 4th-round pick last year who you didn't replace for some reason this year. The guy holds the ball longer than Justin Fields did at Ohio State. He avoids the pocket unnecessarily. He doesn't make full field reads necessarily every time around, and doesn't have the arm strength to make every throw. You're bringing this guy in. You're putting him in behind that offensive line. I just do not see, and this is a one-year wonder, by the way. This is a guy who, because I went to Clemson, we used to love playing Pittsburgh. That was one of those teams in the ACC we loved playing because it was Kenny Pickett, and Kenny Pickett was a 13-touchdown, 8-interception guy every year until this past season. And then it was just this historic jump that you cannot possibly predict for anyone. So looking at this and then looking at where all the other quarterbacks went so late, that if Kenny Pickett was not the runaway favorite to be the top quarterback taken on everyone else's board, then this is a horrendous pick. Because there's a reality that exists out there where Kenny Pickett and every quarterback in this draft had a 3rd-round grade on them. And Pittsburgh took Kenny Pickett at 20th overall. It's not awful they had a 2nd-round grade on him because Jerry Jones showed us Dallas's board. Dallas had about 14 or 15 guys graded in the 1st round.
Yep.
So and Pittsburgh at 20, it's not that bad they had a 2nd-round grade on it. All the other QBs basically were 3rd-rounders, though. So you're telling me that Kenny Pickett was that much better than all these other guys? I just don't know if I can believe that. I don't know if I can buy that, especially because Pittsburgh overdrafts these dudes. They've done this in the past. They overdraft players they like because they're old-fashioned. So that bugs me a lot. I love, though, round 2 and round 3. Amazing. Awesome. I loved it. George Pickens, there are some concerns there. I'm willing to accept those concerns. Pittsburgh just finds receivers, and they generally are wide receiver factory. So I'm okay. If Pittsburgh wants to take a shot on a wide receiver in the 2nd round, I'm cool with it. And something like Pickens would have been a 1st-round pick if he was able to go straight from his freshman year to the NFL. So I'm cool with that one. DeMarvin Leal was amazing in 2020. It's a bit of a tweener and not that great this past year. I think he'll fit Pittsburgh's scheme fairly well. And I think that in reality, I mean, this is a guy who had 1st-round views going even into the midway through the season. And he dropped off quite a bit, but 3rd round's probably right about where he should go. And Pittsburgh got him. And he's got the upside to be a potential 1st-round pick. So I love that pick as well. Calvin Austin one. You and I went back and forth about this one a little bit.
That we did.
This is I don't love this one because it basically means that Deontay Johnson is not going to be in Pittsburgh anymore. Essentially, it means they're not going to pay him. And to me, while Calvin Austin is a really good player and a really dynamic player, there's now a player that small that has succeeded at the NFL level as a star receiver in recent history.
Fair.
And if you're asking basically Calvin Austin to replace Deontay Johnson, you are basically setting yourself up to fail because you are betting on a historical improbability that he will go out there and be as good as Deontay Johnson. So I am a little bit worried about that. And again, year 1, I don't know how much he plays because they've already said they want to split time in the slot between George Pickens and Chase Claypool. So assuming Pickens is healthy to play week 1, which I'm assuming he is because it's been almost, 2 years at this point for the ACL or a year and a half, then I just don't know if Calvin Austin even plays as a rookie that much. So this pick worried me a little bit because the offensive line is trash and the quarterback depth is suspect at best. So this was not the player. It's not the player I dislike. It's the pick and the fit right now for Pittsburgh. After that, go ahead.
No, I'll say it. And as you alluded to, leading into that, we did have a disagreement. We did go back and forth a little bit on Twitter. I like this kid, man. I get it from a fan perspective. It's a little cute of a pick considering the other needs that you had. So I will agree with you there. It feels like a luxury pick, if you will. It feels like they could have gone in a number of other directions at that pick, anywhere along the offensive line, like you said, corner, wherever. They could have gone elsewhere, and they didn't. But I don't hate it because maybe that means Deontay Johnson is out because I think his contract expires after this season.
I think so.
And then if it's not him, and maybe they do bring him back, but they don't like Chase Claypool. Because let's be honest, I don't know how you feel about Claypool, but I don't think he screams star to me.
No, he was this past year. He could not. This past year was ugly for Claypool. It was real bad.
Either or one of those guys they could replace. But I think Calvin Austin's going to fit like a glove in this system. Maybe not this year. Maybe he plays some special teams. He's your return man early on as a rookie. But he'll get some time. These, for whatever reason, Steelers receivers haven't tended to suck or get hurt at different points in the season. I know recently it was like Juju Smith-Schuster. I know back in the day, early on, Hines Ward had injury problems. Plaxico Burress had injury problems early on. They turned out fine. But it is a thing with the Steelers. They always have issues at receiver staying healthy. So I think we'll see him at some point, and he might even be a gadget guy in this offense. But I'm not as much gloom and doom as you are with these guys. But go on, tell us what next.
I'm always gloom and doom when it comes to Pittsburgh. I always am. But no, I had Calvin Austin ranked 114 on my board, and Pittsburgh got him at 138. So that's a value pick. Again, nothing gets the player. It's more just the selection itself compared to what we needed. And then after that.
Now, on the other end of Greg's question, the Browns.
Yeah, the Browns. I actually I saw some people really giving the Browns trouble for their draft class. I actually kind of liked it. I don't think Martin Emerson right off the bat at 68 was a great pick. I had him ranked 117.
Okay.
So I think that's probably why most people hate on this draft class to some extent, because Martin Emerson was the first one to go. But Alex Wright at 78, I have him at 86. That's really, so it's not, at that point, that's a fine pick. And again, he fills the need for you at the edge position, but Jadeveon Clowney going away. And Wright's a guy who's got really good size. It's just a question of can he build a little more muscle into his frame and eliminate some unnecessary weight. But he's got really good size and really good bend for someone that big. David Bell is a controversial pick who went at 99, but really that's right about where I expect him to go. I had him at 109 on my board. Doesn't separate really well, but it sounds like from what I'm hearing from NFL scouts who are talking after the fact that the NFL was probably higher on him than the media because he does catch the ball so well. And he has some separation skills very early on in the route, just not the long speed skills.
That's my boy.
Yeah, people like that pick, and I think it'll actually fit pretty well for what the Browns are going to be looking for early on. And then Perrion Winfrey, who led the Senior Bowl, goes in the 4th round. He's going to be excellent for the pass rush. You probably aren't going to get much from him in terms of stopping the run, but on pass rushing downs, he's going to be a monster for you. Jerome Ford, I don't know why you need to add another running back to that room, but I like Jerome Ford quite a bit. So that's going to be a depth piece that will help you out. And just going later on in the draft, Michael Woods, Isaiah Thomas, and Dawson Deaton, all solid pickups to add at the very end of the draft.
For me, this Cleveland Browns class, I'll give them a solid B+. While you're not so sure on Martin Emerson, and some people thought that was a questionable pick at 68th, I loved it. I'm a huge fan of Martin Emerson. I think he could definitely be a starter in the right system, and I had him right around that range on my big board. So for that, that's a win. Alex Wright is a win for all the reasons you said. I've said it multiple times on this show how much I like David Bell. Maybe that'll be my undoing, but David Bell in the 3rd round, I think that's a win as well. Perrion Winfrey's a big get in the 4th round. He had a huge Senior Bowl, a great pre-draft process, all positive things for Perrion Winfrey. I was shocked he dropped that far, but I think he'll be a great fit in this rotation. And then the rest of the guys, Cade York should start at kicker. Obviously, you take him in the 4th round, he better win that kicker job.
Yeah, you can't cut him. You cannot afford to cut him.
And he was one of the better, if not the best kicker in college football over the last couple of years, so that's fine. And then you have Jerome Ford. Like you said, I know you were a huge fan of Jerome Ford coming into the draft. To get him in the 5th, I'm sure that got high grades for you as well.
Yeah, I had him ranked at 79. They got him at 156. So that was a big get on my board.
Huge win. So the Browns had themselves a weekend. And you know what? Since we're talking about all these other AFC North teams, let's just talk about the Bengals real quick. Might as well. All right. we have a lot of people who watch the show and fans of the NFL Pick'em show that are a lot of people in the Ohio area. So Cleveland, Cincinnati, let's stay in the division. And let's talk a little bit about what the Bengals did, all right? Because the Bengals were one of those teams that came into the draft in a pretty good position. They didn't really have many glaring, disgusting needs. They filled them. They needed an offensive line this offseason. They filled a bunch of holes at guard, tackle, center, did a great job in free agency. They didn't really lose anyone of major worth. They brought back all their key players, particularly in the secondary and Bates and Awuzie and so on and so forth. So they really just needed this draft to add more talent to an already talented young roster. And getting Daxton Hill at the end of the first round, who can play safety and nickelback, was a great get. Cam Taylor-Britt, who I had listed at safety, but I know you had him listed at corner. He was listed at corner when they drafted him. He can play either position. Good playmaker. I think he'll fit well as well in that secondary. They needed some more depth back there. Zachary Carter in the third round. I wasn't as high on Carter coming out of Florida. I am a Gators fan. I wasn't as high on him coming out, but that's still a good pick in the third round. It would be nitpicking for me to say otherwise. And then Cordell Volson, the offensive lineman from North Dakota State, at 136 in the fourth round. Another solid backup piece. Tyson Anderson, the safety from Toledo, in the fifth round. Big athlete, very solid get at 166, right around the range that I had him on my big board. And then a little sleeper that not many people might know about, Jeffrey Gunter, the edge rusher from Coastal Carolina, another good athlete. Solid potential there for a late round pick. They got him at 252. I had him at 199 on my big board. So taking a flyer on a guy like that was a nice get. What are your thoughts on Cincinnati's draft?
Yeah, I gave Pittsburgh a B overall. I gave Cincinnati a B minus because I was trying to be a little bit harsh in some of these picks. And really, when it comes down to it for the Bengals, I think granted, Pittsburgh, if Kenny Pickett's terrible, then Pittsburgh will automatically have a worse draft class. But the Bengals did not get that many guys who I view as immediate starters. I think Daxton Hill can start immediately for you. I don't know what role he'll play in your defense because you already have a starting slot corner, Mike Hilton, who you're paying. And he's really good at his job. As a Pittsburgh fan, I know I miss him quite a bit all the time. Please send him
right.
And you do already have safeties who have hostile experience in Jesse Bates, who I think is on the franchise tag, and Von Bell, who is expiring contract year this year or next year. I forget. The thought being that you're probably going to replace one of those guys eventually. Of those three that I mentioned, that slot corner, the two safeties, someone's going to go eventually. But I just don't know where Daxton Hill will play to start his career in Cincinnati because you have those guys already in place and you're paying all of them. Cam Taylor-Britt, again, guys, some people view as a safety for some reasons. You know, he got owned pretty hard by Chris Olave in that one clip that gets distributed everywhere. So I think Taylor-Britt's going to be an interesting one. Is he better than Eli Apple? Probably. A lot of people are better than Eli Apple. But the question will be, when does he see the playing field? When is he ready? Zachary Carter was a reach, in my opinion, because he's a tweener who does not have the mass to play inside. He has to play on the edge. And doesn't have the bend or pure get-off and athleticism you want from a guy who plays on the edge full time. So that was a bit of a confusing pick for me, especially how the Bengals, their defensive linemen they had last year were so run-oriented, they had so much bulk for the interior defensive line this past year. And Zachary Carter is almost the exact opposite of that based on what I've seen from him. He's one of the lighter guys who tries to play in the interior defensive line. And Cordell Volson, an older player from North Dakota State, they turn out offensive linemen there left and right every year, it feels like. My concern with that is going to be the fact that he is an older player, and two, a guy who I don't know if he has the ceiling to start in any particular spot. Now, is he a really good backup? Yeah, he's a really good backup. I think he could play in the NFL for 10 years as a backup player and be an effective player. The issue will be you took him at 136 when you could potentially get a starter at a different location. And I just, like I said, I don't even know if this guy can play tackle. He might just be a guard, frankly. And you have someone who's younger than Jackson Carman who has some guard tackle versatility already in your roster. So, again, hit or miss for most of this class. I like Tyson Anderson quite a lot. A guy who played a lot of cornerback in college who's going to play safety in the NFL. Who's a big dude. I think that's a really good value pick. And then Gunter, a guy who's really effective and just has really good statistical production in college going in the 7th round. Again, another value pick there late. Well, I just question how many of these guys are actually going to see the field in year one compared with Pittsburgh. I know Pittsburgh's the first 3 guys they take are going to play almost immediately. And I don't know about that with Cincinnati.
Now, before we move on, because we have a few questions to catch up on. A question that I want to touch on after we're done with these questions that are coming up. But I want to remind you that The Grueling Truth and this show are powered by betting.net. Betting.net is your best bet for finding the online casino or sportsbook that's right for you. So head on over to betting.net. So let's move on. We've got a bunch of Greg questions coming up. 2 different Gregs, but 3 questions. So let's move on from the AFC North, and we're going to go out to the West. The Chargers. Gorecki wants to know, what are your thoughts on the Chargers draft? And Sam, if you don't mind, I'll take points on this one. Looking at it, very solid. I would say solid but unspectacular. And I say that because I like the prospects that they got in the spots that they took them, but it doesn't really have any of that pizzazz that you look for. And I say that because in the first round, they took Zion Johnson, 17th overall. One of my favorite interviews, actually. Really good kid, very well-spoken, and had his thoughts very, very much in line. He was not at all awestruck by the crowd or the media or anything like that. And he was a really good interview. So that aside, his play on the field, we've already touched on leading into the draft. His versatility spoke for itself. Very talented player. I had him at 21 on my big board. He's going to slide in and be an automatic starter from week 1. I would be shocked if only injury would hold him out of the lineup from week 1. You could slide him in right now at right guard, all right, or left guard if you want Matt Fielder at right guard. You put Zion at left guard. You could even put Zion if you really felt squirrely. I know you had this pick when we did our mock draft, and you had Zion, I think, going to the Saints in our mock. And the thought was, well, he's played right tackle at least. He played right tackle, I think, in 1 game this past season, but he's played there. So if you're feeling squirrely and you don't like Storm Norton at right tackle or Trey Pipkins, slide Zion out there for a spell. But the Zion pick was great. Love that. JT Woods, I know you were a fan of JT Woods coming into the draft. Isaiah Spiller, who kind of fell a little bit, but I think he's going to be the RB2 there right away. They have nothing really behind Austin Eckler. It's Joshua Kelly, Larry Roundtree, Dan Kornhauser. That's it. So Isaiah Spiller should be the RB2 there from week 1. 3 solid prospects at the top, but it doesn't get you excited. Jamari Salyer, who took it in the 6th round, was a huge win. He fell hard. I don't know why, but good players, solid rotational guys, but no one who sticks out like a stud.
Yeah, I gave him a B-, so the same grade as Cincinnati, because Zion Johnson is going to start week 1, and he's automatically going to make that line much better. But looking at everyone else, unless you're running 3 safety sets, because you already have Derwin James and Nasir Adderley on that defense, who are both high picks, unless you're running 3 safety sets, you're probably not going to see a lot of JT Woods, who I did like quite a bit in this process, but maybe not this high. Spiller is a good running back, 4th round value, probably makes a lot of sense there, but not going to be the feature back per se. That's Austin Eckler, and we all know it's Austin Eckler. Otito, I'm not going to try to pronounce that last name, or Ogbani, I don't know. I messed it up, I'm sure. Interior defense on UCLA. We talked about them needing defensive line help. They got it there, but he's a rotational guy. He's not going to start. Jamari Salyer is really what has a chance to save this draft class. I think he fell because of injury concerns.
Okay.
I'm not sure what injury was the cause of it, but I think there's some concerns there on the medical end. He legitimately could start. If you look at Storm Norton, look what Salyer did, both being able to play a guard role, both being able to play tackle role in college football. I think Salyer, who has snaps at all 5 positions in college, I think there's a role for him in this line. At the very least, he's going to be a swing tackle, because 6th man on the offensive line is going to get a lot of run if anyone gets hurt. So I think that's a really big win. That's what really is carrying the draft for me, because as far as I'm concerned, Zion Johnson's the only day 1 starter in this class. The only guy who I think has a really good chance to start by the end of the year is Salyer. Maybe JT Woods as well. Well, I just don't think this is a draft class that adds a lot of starters to this team.
Now, let's move on. We're going to stay with the Gregs, the Greg questions, but we're going to move on from Gorecki. We're going to go to Greg Ryan. What's up, bud? My buddy Greg, big Titans fan. And he wants to know what we thought of what the Titans did. And I see what you did there, Greg, with the lettering there. And I want you to know I like it. I like what you did. I'm going to message you later and I'll remind you that I like what you did there. I see it and I like it. But the Tennessee Titans, Sam, how do you think the Titans did this weekend? They were one of the teams that were a part of a very big trade when they traded A.J. Brown over to the Philadelphia Eagles for the 18th overall pick. And I feel comfortable saying that the Philadelphia Eagles made that pick after seeing how the board played out, seeing Jahan Dotson go 16th overall to the Redskins, which we'll touch on that a little bit later as well, because I have some thoughts on that front. But after all these other top receivers went off the board, Philadelphia was absolutely disgusted, and they made a move. They traded for A.J. Brown, subsequently gave him a 4-year, $100 million contract, which the Titans were not willing to do. So Tennessee gets the 18th overall pick. They take Treylon Burks, and that wasn't even their biggest pick that they made of the weekend, because Malik Willis fell and fell and fell and fell and fell some more. And yes, Greg, I do like it. I like it a lot. We're going to go back, put that question back up. And Malik Willis fell to them in the third round, 86th overall. Sam, what are your thoughts on the Tennessee Titans class?
If we're taking it just in a vacuum for this draft class, I gave it a B+. I like the picks. If you have to factor in the fact you traded away A.J. Brown and replaced him with Treylon Burks, it's probably much lower than that, because Treylon Burks is a substantial drop-off from A.J. Brown. I shouldn't have to say that. Brown, apparently they were only offering Tennessee only like $16 million a year or something like that, which in the modern receiver market is disgusting, considering what Christian Kirk got on his contract. So I don't know. Tennessee trading away A.J. Brown and not getting more for him, first off, and then the replacement from his Treylon Burks, the guy who is more of a gadget player, doesn't really run routes in college that much. Or he's catching everything he's either on a vertical play or a screen or something like within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage. You're trying to replace one of the most dynamic receivers in the NFL with Treylon Burks, who tested below everything we expect him to be. He's not that special of an athlete compared to A.J. Brown. It's just a very difficult scenario for me to get my head around. I mean, you could have at least offered him $21 million per year, and he probably would have taken it. And they didn't offer him that money. So when you factor that in, this has probably been, for a weekend overall, probably been a C for the Tennessee Titans. But if we're talking about just purely their draft picks, I gave it a B+, because while I do not like the Treylon Burks pick at 18, I like Roger McCreary at 35, who's the guy who I was high on throughout the entire process. I like Malik Willis at 86, because that's arguably the best quarterback in the class, or at least the quarterback with the most upside in the class. And you got him in the late third round. You got Nicholas Petit-Frere at 69. That's probably a little bit higher for him, but overall, not too dissimilar from where I projected he would go. I have him at 76 on my board. Hassan Haskins is a good power back. Chico Okonkwo, tight end from Maryland, you can move him around quite a bit. I think he'll actually fit what they want to do and replace what Jonas Smith was for them 2 years ago. In the slot receiver, Kyle Phillips in the 5th round. Overall, I think this is a very good draft class. It just stinks that you had to trade away a top 10 wide receiver and you tried to replace him with Treylon Burks.
Did you say A.J. Brown, top 10 wide receiver?
Potentially. He is top 10.
Yeah.
There are weeks where he's a top 10 wide receiver. There are a lot of really good receivers in the NFL. You know that. There's a lot of good. I'll back off that a little bit.
Nah, don't back off. You said what you said. Greg heard it. I heard it. You said what you said. You stick by it. Now, listen, I loved A.J. Brown coming out of Ole Miss. That was my wide receiver 1 in that draft class. Huge fan of A.J. Brown. Love everything about his game. Love him as an NFL player. And I think the Tennessee Titans are going to miss him. And I will agree 100%. You're absolutely right when you say he is better right now than Burks. Burks is one of those guys that you love him or you hate him. And I
hate him.
There's pretty much no middle ground. You hate him?
No.
I love him. And I mean, I see the run after catch ability. Okay. When I look at him, I see more of A.J. Brown than I do, say, a Laquan Treadwell. Because when we're looking at production, size, and measurables, speed, so on and so forth, Burks is pretty close to Laquan Treadwell when he was coming out of college in terms of testing numbers and size and lack of production in college. Then he is a top-tier wide receiver. But honestly, I'm willing to overlook that Burks is a fluid athlete. He could do it all, I think, at the next level. He obviously needs some polish. He needs to work on his drops. He needs to be better at jump balls, which for someone his size, 6'3", 225, give or take, he shouldn't have those sorts of problems. He should be more of a better and more consistent jump ball guy and a high point guy, and then someone who's able to finish in traffic. But I like the flashes of physicality. I love the speed. I love the yak, yards after catch. And I think he's going to be a solid piece for the Titans. Obviously, year one, he might struggle, but I think he's a great piece for Malik Willis moving forward. I love McCreary. Petit Fear at one point, first round in mocks early on in the process. I know on this very show, I had him in the first round going to the Bengals before free agency. So that tells you how high I thought of him at one point. And, I mean, they picked him at pick number 69, so automatically that pick is an A+ in my book just because of that. But the big get here is Malik Willis. And, I mean, the talks of him going second overall, I said all along were foolish.
Yeah.
If Lions actually did it, I mean, I'm wearing a Lions hat right now. If the Lions actually did that, I probably would have lit this hat on fire during this show. But I don't think he should have dropped that far. The fact that he did, I think, is a blessing in disguise, because now it takes all the pressure off of him. When you're a first-round quarterback, fans expect the quarterback to play. It's just that simple. Unless you have a Brett Favre sitting in front of him when you take an Aaron Rodgers at the end of the first round, and you already got a Hall of Fame quarterback starting, you know, unless you have that, you're going to want him to start at year one. That's just a matter of fact. And especially
you take a Jordan Love when you have an Aaron Rodgers sitting in front of you.
Exactly. You take a Jordan Love when you have another Hall of Famer, Aaron Rodgers, sitting in front of him. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's not a lot of pressure on those guys because they got Hall of Famers holding it down and keeping their seat warm for them. But in this case, I like the fact that he dropped to the third round. I think it sucks for him personally. I'm sure it hurts to fall that far. I mean, I had him going to the Steelers in our mock draft on this show at 20th overall. And there was a lot of talk going into the draft of how much the Steelers were in love with him, how much time Tomlin had spent with him. The rumors were swirling. Now,
I was buying it. I was buying all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the fact that he could have gone 20th overall in an alternate universe, and the fact that he drops to 86th overall, I think it's only going to do nothing but good things. Tannehill's a bit of a dick in the interview when they asked him, "Oh, are you ready to help him out?" And he's like, "Nah, I'm not here to groom anybody. I'm here to win football games. I'm here to win a chip." I mean, I like that answer from your starting quarterback, but it was kind of a dickhead response. You know, the politically correct response is to be a good teammate and say, "Yeah, I'll teach this kid whatever he wants. You know, he'll learn from me, blah, blah, blah." You know, play that role. But I think this is a great thing for his career, all things considered.
When he ends up in a pretty good spot, when we talk about GM head coach tandem, this is a solid place for him to be in. Of course, it's not as good as it was when they had AJ Brown a couple of days ago, but it's still, I think, overall a decent place to be when you can turn the ball around and hand it off to Derrick Henry as frequently as you can.
Yeah,
I think you have to feel pretty confident with him developing on a team like Tennessee, and you can say at least it's not one of these organizations that is known to just ruin guys like Malik Willis and underdevelop them or not develop them at all. Because there are plenty of franchises like that.
Jeff Fisher is no longer in town to ruin quarterbacks.
Yes. Instead, is he coaching the USFL now or something like that?
Yeah, he could ruin, non-NFL quarterbacks. He doesn't need to be in the league ruining top prospects like Malik Willis or Vince Young, all right? I know Greg still got a sore spot regarding that from back in the day.
Yeah, but I think this is overall, like I said, I like the draft class for Tennessee. I just wish they could have done everything in their power to keep A.J. Brown around.
My only qualm with their early picks was Hassan Haskins. When they took him, I messaged Greg because we're pretty much in contact. Greg, myself, and Bob. We got a little chat going on. Bob, I've done the Shoot the J podcast, the basketball show that we had done on Tuesday. It's been a while, but I digress. the second half of Dan and Bob Talking Sports podcast. But I messaged Greg and I was like, when they made that pick, I was like, I smelled vinegar. Just gross. It was a typical Titans pick. And I get it because he fits. He's a power back. He fits that power offense. He's not going to dance. He's not a receiver. You're going to give him the rock, and you're going to hope he does what Derek would do, bow wow, and just fucking lower his head in the pile, drive forward for 4 yards a carry, and call it a day. That was the only pick I think draft class in the first 5 rounds that I had any questions with, but that's nitpicking. I like that they took Okonkwo, the tight end from Maryland. He's a Jonnu Smith clone. I love that they took Kyle Phillips in the 5th round. He should have probably gone a round minimum, a round higher. They got him at 163. I had him at 98 on my big board. He's another one who had a great process, a great pre-draft process leading up. And yeah, so before we go on, because we still got some stuff to cover, and we're at the 46-minute mark, I want to remind you guys to find the best place to bet for you. Betting.net offers expert and user reviews for every online sportsbook and casino in your state. So head on over to betting.net. One more question from the other Greg Gurecki. Greg 1. He says, can John Mechie III make an impact with the Houston Texans this season? Now, to let you guys know, in case you needed a little refresher, the Houston Texans took Mechie in the 2nd round, 44th overall. He's yet another prospect coming off of injury. And if it weren't for that injury, I mean, the fact that he went 44th overall, he could have very well been a late 1st round pick if he were healthy, if he's going 44th overall coming off of an injury. So, me personally, it was a little early to take Mechie, but I think an impact right away. I mean, why not? This is a team that badly needed assistance at the wide receiver position. I mean, let's be honest. Mills is your quarterback. You got really nothing at running back. Mack was your leading back going into the draft, but with a bunch of rejects of Rex Burkhead, Royce Freeman, Dare Olay, just gross. They drafted Damian Pierce, who might very well be their RB1. But at receiver, you're talking about Brandon Cooks, Nico Collins, Conley, Philip Dorsett. It's gross. So with Cooks and Nico Collins probably locked into 2 of the 3 starting wide receiver spots and 3 receiver sets, I like the Mechie pick. And I think as long as he's healthy, he can make some moves right away.
Yeah, I think he'll be their starting slot option. Frankly, he has that inside-out versatility, and he's just a really good pure route runner. This is a guy who will consistently give Davis Mills an open target in the short to intermediate throws, which is something he needs. So I think he'll get a lot of run immediately. And I would be surprised if, assuming he's healthy week 1, I would be surprised if he finishes the season with under 700 receiving yards. Like, he'll probably be 700 to 800 receiving yards as a rookie.
If healthy.
If healthy. If
right.
He misses the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season, throw it out the window. But if he's healthy week 1, I think he has a legit chance to be a guy who gets you somewhere between 35 to 55 receiving yards a game.
Now, I had to share this because I mentioned Fisher before, and I'm sure every single Titan fan will say the same thing, maybe even Rams fans. And then here we go. Thanks for the Titans take. You are welcome, Greg. Thank you for tuning in. We always appreciate people's questions watching the show. Don't hesitate. If you guys have any questions, concerns, topics, any teams you want us to discuss, anything you want us to cover, feel free to comment in those comment sections on YouTube, Facebook. I don't even know where else we are.
We're in a lot now.
We're all over the
no
place.
idea.
Twitch.
I don't know.
Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook. I mean, we're all over the place. So wherever you are and you're watching, thank you guys for tuning in. Again, any questions, concerns, comments, etc., we will be happy to discuss on air. Now, we were talking about some of our winners earlier, and like I said, there's a lot of teams that I liked what they did. But let's turn the page a little bit, all right? Let's shift gears. And let's go from teams that you loved to drafts that you absolutely hated. Sam, give me one of your just Yuck. Where is my boy? There he is. Just one of these. Just you look at their class and you think ananas. Pineapples. I don't like it. I need an adult. This is the safe word. Give me a team. Give me your first. I hate it.
Well, there's a pretty obvious option that I'm going to leave on the table for now. The New Orleans Saints. I hated this draft class. I absolutely hated everything the Saints did in this whole process.
Tell me about it, bro.
So you trade up to manage to have 2 first-round picks this year.
Mm-hmm.
So you lose your next year. Philadelphia owns your first-round pick in 2022. You trade up again to get Chris Olave, who, granted, I feel better about that pick now, knowing that the wide receiver market was just absolutely insane for no apparent reason. But I feel a little bit better about that pick, knowing that everyone shot off the board when they did. That being said, Chris Olave, I've always viewed, while a really good player, as a high-end wide receiver too. So you're not even drafting a high-end wide receiver. One that pick at 11th overall. Then you're basically forced to take Trevor Penny at 19th overall, a guy who tested great, but really does not have the natural bend you want. He gives up leverage too easily. He can get steamrolled by guys who are 245 pounds or 285 pounds because, frankly, he can lose to either one of those guys based on his technique and his struggles in that area. He has many penalties called against him this past season as his quarterback had touchdowns at 16. And he's just all that tough guy macho business just hurts the team because he had like 4 or 5 or 6 personal fouls that get called against him this past year. It just kills you. I mean, he's not a smart player when it comes to this kind of stuff. And I don't view him as a guy who's going to be ready to start week 1. I just don't. So Trevor Penny at 19 to me was a push. Alontae Taylor at 49 was probably around too early. I liked Alontae Taylor a lot in the process, but I had him at 80 overall on my board. That's probably too early. DeMarco Jackson, Jordan Jackson, the 5th and 6th round, don't move the needle for me whatsoever. Those guys are special teams players, bottom of the roster type dudes. So the 3 guys that the Saints picked, that they had shot, and also because they traded so much draft capital to get these guys, get that high-end wide receiver too, that tackle that is flawed, and I don't know if he'll even play that well in year 1, and that cornerback that some people believe should play safety because they're not sure about his ability to play at the NFL level at that position. And in the 2nd round. So I just, overall, I very much dislike this draft class. Not so much because of all the players, but because they get all smashed together. Because the Saints trade away so many picks just to get Trevor Penning and Chris Olave.
You know, I don't hate that Saints class as much as you do. They only had 5 picks, which, like you said, is due to a lot of trading, and this is what they do. They target guys they want, and they move up and down very liberally as they see fit. Maybe Olave was a little early for my taste, but honestly, that's nitpicking. It took him 11th. I had him at 17th on my big board. Penning, I couldn't disagree with you more on that Penning pick. I love that Penning pick. They slide that man in at left tackle, and I don't think they got to worry about a damn thing moving forward. Am I saying he's perfect? No, absolutely not. If he were a perfect left tackle prospect, he would have got top 5, regardless of where he went to school. But no, he's got ideal size and length for the position. He's strong as hell. We saw what he did at the Senior Bowl. He was manhandling grown-ass men the whole week. Just dominant rep after dominant rep. He showed that he belonged. Does he need some work? Yes. He's not. His bend isn't quite right. He's got average quickness. I don't like his footwork from time to time, but you can't teach what he's got. The length, the strength. I think he's got good awareness as well for the position because on tape, he worked well against twists and stunts up front. So I don't really mind that pick. And I had him at 19th overall on my big board, and it took him with the 19th pick. So I'm going to give myself a little pat on the back on that one because, that's one thing. Before we move on, that's one thing that disgusts me about the draft is we spend so much time scouting, putting our boards together, so on and so forth. So many notes and stats and nonsense that we track. And then we do mock drafts and whatever. And the mock drafts are a fun exercise to see like where the stock of certain prospects are and whatnot. That's why we do it. But every year, and particularly the last couple of years, my big board actually is better at placing these prospects than my actual mock draft. And it's not just the first round where, for example, I have a guy like Penning, 19th on my board, and he goes 19th overall, but like it's randomly throughout, and it'll be like this guy had ranked at 67, he went 69. I had this guy ranked at 85 and he went 88. Like random stuff like that. And I don't know, for what it's worth. It's just one of those things that I guess I like it, but I don't know. It feels disappointing.
I had the same thing happen to me. I had the Charlie Kolar pick in the 4th round. I had the exact number on my board that where Baltimore took him. I was one number off on Channing Tindall. I was one number off on Lewis Steen. It just randomly happens on sometimes. And like I can never predictably get down to the 3rd round and have anything right in a long-term mock draft, but I can do it on my big board somehow, just randomly.
Like I had Neil Farrell Jr. at 128 on my board. He goes 126. You know what I'm saying? Like random stuff like that. Sky Moore, I had him at 56. He goes 54th. So like I feel like I'm doing something right, but I'm missing something somewhere. And at the end of the day, especially with a draft class like this that lacked so many top-end prospects and consensus rankings and stuff like that, it was very, very much, we said it in our mock draft, we said it in the weeks leading up to the draft where we're doing our positional rankings. It's very much, it'll come down to what these teams' flavors are, what their systems are, what kind of coaching staffs they have, what kind of prospect they're looking for. Like certain teams, for example, were prioritizing speed. Like the Patriots, for example, they were prioritizing athletes and speed and stuff like that. It's things they don't really prioritize on a year-to-year basis. You know, they normally prioritize positional versatility, players who are captains at major programs, Alabama players, smart players, heady players, guys who made the calls on offense or defense, things like that. But this was very much what's your flavor one. And Ryan, so Sam thinks Pickens and Mechie are better than Burks based on what I'm hearing. And he says, well, he did say he hates him. So Sam, you have a chance to defend your stance, sir. Defend yourself. Pickens and Mechie.
So
Burks. Yeah, where do they all fall? What are your thoughts? Come on. Greg's questioning you. So I'm curious.
I did have Burks at wide receiver 6. My concern with Burks is where they took him, and the fact they're trying to get him to replace A.J. Brown. That's what I don't like about Burks, is the draft location and the role he's going to try to project into at the next level. So I have him at wide receiver 6. I had Pickens at wide receiver 9. That's most based on the fact that he played all of 100 snaps this past year and caught 8 or 9 passes and just never saw the field. So I had him down that low because – I mean, what do you expect? I can't really project that guy at the NFL level, having not seen him play in basically a year or two. And then I had John Mechie ranked as my wide receiver 11 as a 3rd round selection. So I don't love him in the 2nd round. I just think that in Houston, he's going to get a lot of opportunities because he is a very high floor, low ceiling player. And I think the Texans those guys will start in Houston very easily because Houston does not have a lot of players like that. Houston does not have a lot of guys you project to be immediate stars. So I think Mechie just gets a lot of opportunities early on in the system he's going to, where they're going to easily play him in the slot. I think George Pickens gets the benefit of going to Pittsburgh and also probably finally being healthy. And he's going to be the wide receiver 3 on that team, maybe even wide receiver 4 if he's not healthy and Calvin Austin's ready to go. Mm-hmm. And then you got Treylon Burks, who's going to be asked to be the wide receiver 1 while Robert Woods recovers from injury. And you're trying to fill the void left by Julio Jones, who was not that good this past year anyway, but him and A.J. Brown. So it's just a situational thing.
So I think I'm going to speak for Greg when I say Sam, you butt. It's fine. It's fine. I'm not judging you. I'm just saying what I'm sure Greg would have said himself. So I'm just translating. That's part of my job here, translation specialist. But before we move on and I give you my first team that disgusted me, I want to remind you guys that betting.net finds the best promotions, offers, and bonus codes so you don't have to. Head over to their website, betting.net, to take advantage of things like free bets and matching deposits. Now, I was looking over this list of team-by-team selections, and we talked about it earlier. And I wasn't sure if I wanted to say it, but I'm gonna say it. The Washington Commanders, formerly the Washington Football Team, also formerly the Washington Redskins, their draft class in particular disgusted me. And
Yes.
mostly because of a combination of picking guys too high and then taking guys I don't really thought that they really needed to address those positions. Now, they took Jahan Dotson 16th overall. They traded back, ended up at 16. That's awesome. But I had Dotson at 36 on my big board. I had him as my wide receiver 6. I'm guessing you had Dotson in front of Burks, Sam?
I don't think I did, actually. I think.
So wait, so who's your wide receiver 5?
I think it was. Oh, my wide receiver 5 was Sky Moore. I had Sky Moore, then Burks, then Christian Watson, then Jahan Dotson at wide receiver 8. He's my 45th ranked player.
So you're even more grossed out than I am by that pick.
I am even lower on Jahan Dotson than you are.
Gross. Yuck. You know what? Where's my boy at? Come here, Bow Wow. It's Derek time, all right? He can sing high like this, okay?
Why are you booing me? I'm right.
It's gross. So Jahan Dotson, huge reach in the first round. They went for Fedarian Mathis at 47th overall. I had him at 104. He doesn't do it for me. Nothing special.
No.
I don't like it. They don't need more defensive line help. I mean, for God's sakes, they got 3 former first-round picks on the defensive line. What are you trying to pull? I can't stand it. So another reach there. Then they took Brian Robinson Jr. in the 3rd round. Did you really need another running back? Did you really need another running back? Really? Really? I guess Antonio Gibson can suck it. I guess anyone who had high hopes for Antonio Gibson in fantasy, they can also suck it. I guess Antonio
Dynasty
Gibson.
League owners are punching air right now.
I guess Antonio Gibson isn't that good. I guess we're all wrong on the potential we see with Antonio Gibson. Okay, both Derek and myself are disgusted by all 3 of those picks. And it doesn't get any better later on. The best pick that they made was your doppelganger, Sam Howell, in the 5th round.
By far.
By far. I mean, this was a kid who was potential late 1st, early 2nd round pick, and he goes 144th overall, all the way in the 5th round. Huge steal. Great pick. A-plus pick on that front. But other than that, and I like Chris Paul, the guard from Tulsa, in the 7th round. I had him at 174 on my big board. I like him too, but yuck. Yuck, yuck, yuck. Sam, are you as disgusted by this Commanders draft class as I am, or am I being too harsh?
No, I think you're right on. I think it was awful. I mean, Percy Butler, the safety they took in the 4th round, is probably just a special teams guy at the NFL level. He's not going to be a starting player for you. At least he probably shouldn't be. Mathis is a player who's too one-dimensional. I know he had a lot of good sack numbers this past year. You watch him on tape, I don't think he's going to get that in the NFL. I think he's a pure run-stopping guy. So you drafted a limited player there. Brian Robinson Jr., I agree. You don't really need to go double down on running back at this point. I think Gibson's a fine player. You don't need to try to replace him. And if you want to replace him at running back, don't do it in the 3rd round. Don't do it with the top 100 pick. Cole Turner, I was surprised he went in round 5, honestly, because of how slow he ran and the fact that he is a converted wide receiver who just doesn't block right now and, frankly, doesn't run that well. So I was a little surprised there. I do like the Chris Paul pick quite a bit. At 230, I think that's a really good value pickup. And Christian Holmes, I didn't even scout at any point. I didn't have him on my top 400 big board. So I gave him a C. I'm totally underwhelmed by this draft class.
I'd say I'd give him a D, and that's the only D that they have this draft. They have no D this draft. None at all. In the D there. Now, I have a question for you because I wanted to ask this here. We're over an hour here. I think we should wrap this up soon, but I have to ask. After this draft class, in other sports, particularly in basketball, we're seeing more and more on a year-to-year basis in the draft, the way teams deploy their lineups. We're seeing a lot of positionless basketball where you want a player on the court who traditionally could be pegged as one particular position, but for your team, he plays several roles, non-conventional for that position. And when I say that, I mentioned, let's say a guy like Joel Embiid, for example, okay, who is a center. He's a 7-footer, and traditionally in the NBA, I know this is a football show, but hear me out. Traditionally in the NBA,
go for it.
we expect them to be rebounders, clog up the paint, get their points on the inside the paint, and make their presence
back to the basket kind of guys.
Back to the basket, etc. And Joel Embiid, Joker, the MVP, they take those standards and they throw them out the damn window because they both can pass. Embiid, at the very least, is a good three-point shooter for a big man. He will shoot it from the outside. Embiid has played great defense thus far in this Heat series. I mean, in the last game, he was rotating on defense and picking up Victor Oladipo, for example, on the wing on a rotation, and picking up Tyler Herro on the outside as well on a defensive switch. So we're seeing that versatility at the center position. We're seeing that elsewhere as well at other positions, on the wing, at guard.
Like Giannis, even Cade Cunningham to some extent.
The traditional point guard, the pass-first point guard, traditional.
The point guards who are now, they go from 6'2" John Stockton to 6'7" Cade Cunningham.
And everything in between. So, like the traditional positional standards are going out the window. In football,
yes,
I feel like we're seeing something very similar because there was a lot of defensive line prospects who in the past would be pigeonholed as a 3-4 defensive end or a 4-3 cover 2 defensive tackle because he was undersized. But now, that guy who would have been a great in a Tampa 2 defense 10 years ago, 15 years ago, is now playing defensive end in a 4-3 front for a team like the Jets. You have receivers, 6'4", 220-pound receivers playing in the slot. You know, you have everything in between. Small corners who wouldn't even see the field 10, 15 years ago, who are 5'8", getting picked in the second, third round and being expected to start right away as slot corners and such. So my question to you is, after this draft, after this offseason, do you see the NFL moving more towards a positionless league where back in the 10 years ago, the Patriots were the only team that really valued positional versatility. But now we're seeing a lot of different teams take that same thought process. Do you think we're moving more towards positionless football compared to the past?
Well, I think so. I think that what we're seeing is physical measurements, maybe with the exception of arm length, don't matter as much as they used to. The areas people are willing to draft players within based on physical measurements have changed. Someone like Marcus Jones, who you meant, I'm assuming you're alluding to him, you're talking about him potentially playing outside or slot because of his size, is someone you ordinarily would not see get drafted as highly as he was. Mm-hmm. But he comes in, he's going to be expected to play a huge role on that Patriots roster right away because they drafted so poorly partially. But someone like him, he's going to be expected to come and play right away. You're drafting someone like Treylon Burks with the belief that you can potentially use him for end rounds or use him in your line of scrimmage quite a bit, like he was used in college, essentially. You're drafting guys like Daxton Hill, who was primarily a slot corner, but you can think you can play him at safety. Jalen Petrie, who was like a linebacker slot guy, you expect to play him at some kind of safety role as well. So you have players like that. And like you mentioned on offense, guys like Treylon Burks, I think it is trending more toward a positionless league to some extent. And even, look at someone like Troy Anderson, who was drafted by Atlanta, played running back and quarterback in college, and now plays linebacker. I think we are transitioning to a league, once again, almost like it used to be, where you play multiple positions, because that's how it was when you first started playing football. You had guys who would play multiple positions, both offense and defense. You're not going to do that. You're not going to see that again. But I do think the league is valuing guys who are capable of playing in multiple spots or multiple alignments. I think it will work in some roles better than others. Okay. I think you can have guys who are going to play that slot corner role, who can also play safety. You can eventually kick outside. I think those guys are going to work better in the NFL than, say, your Zach Carters or your Logan Halls. I think those guys are going to struggle more than the guys who are going to play cornerback, the guys who are going to play receiver, even maybe the guys who are going to play on the offensive line, like Jamari Salyer, who could play, or Zion Johnson, who could play any one of 3 or 4 different spots. I think the guys on the defensive line are going to have a little bit more trouble making that transition. But otherwise, yeah, this is a trend I think that's going to continue because I think teams are going to value that versatility more often than not. And owners will too, because owners go through, I mean, let's face it, owners go through coaches and general managers so quickly that they like having guys who can play multiple schemes.
Mm-hmm. All right, so there's the positional versatility part of it, and I just had to share Greg's comments. Stick to football. I want to grab your pineapple hearing all the basketball takes. And you know what, Greg? If you like my basketball takes, you can catch more. I would really like to do a show tomorrow for the Shoot It podcast where we talk NBA, and I would love to have Greg on there because we had a huge disagreement when it came to the winner of the MVP trophy in the NBA. Joel Embiid did not win it. It was Nikola Jokic who won the MVP back-to-backs. And we disagreed on that front. And I think that would be a great show for the podcast. And since Bob is in Jamaica, Bob, I hope you're enjoying the sun out there. Make some bad decisions. Enjoy it. Enjoy the beach and the water and all that good stuff and the good food. But since Bob's in Jamaica, maybe Greg will be on the show tomorrow. We'll see. We'll see what goes on. No promises. And before we move on, Greg said before the show ends, let's get a top 10 prospects for next year's draft from both of us. Not this show, Greg. Not this show. We gotta tease you guys a little bit. We gotta keep you coming back. All right. If we give you everything in one shot, there's no reason for you to keep showing up. So we're not going to give you our top 10 for the draft in 2023 in this show, but we're definitely going to touch on that in one of our future shows, maybe in the next episode. So stay tuned for that. But we're over an hour. We're at an hour and 12 minutes in this podcast. Thank you guys for sticking with us thus far. Look at this guy. I gotta put it up there. May as well be Ben Simmons shooting the J. You know what? It might as well. It might as well. And then Greg 1. Thank you for sticking with us, Greg, number 1. Too early to speculate. And you know what? You might be right, but the Fiends are out, and it is never too early to look to next year. So we'll definitely touch on next year's class. But before we go, there is a little matter of business that we have to attend to. And Sam is smiling, so he knows what's going on. He knows what it is.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. Now, before we do it.
This is potentially very bad for me.
Potentially bad. Before we do it, I want to remind you guys that we're powered by betting.net, and betting.net finds the best promotions, offers, and bonus codes so you don't have to. Head over to their website now, betting.net, to take advantage of things like free bets and matching deposits. Betting.net. Now, the final frontier. We did a mock draft on this show. And I have the results in front of me. Sam, how do you think you did personally?
I think I did
before
awful.
I say what actually happened, how do you?
I think I did awful.
Okay,
I think I did pretty bad. Remind me, did I pick evens or odds? I think I picked odds, right?
You picked first.
Yeah, so I got Travon Walker. They gave me the give me one. And after that, I'm not sure I got anything right.
Well, here it is. Okay, there's a lot of red X's on there. I don't know if you could see that. But we were both pretty butt cheeks, okay? And let me just put this up here real quick. So, the NFL Draft Show mock draft. Whose butt? I think the easy answer is both of us.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Total, we only ended up with 5 correct team-to-pick selections, team-to-player selections. So you started us off. You had the odds. I had the evens. You had Trayvon Walker. You had Evan Neal to the Giants, even though you had him 5th. We'll get back to that in a moment. And that was it. I had Aiden Hutchinson too, the gimme. Then I had Chris Olave to the Saints. I had him at 16, but they did trade up to 11. And I had Smith, offensive tackle Tulsa, going to Dallas at 24th.
Yeah, that's going on you then, getting that one. That's That's pretty far down the board, honestly.
I do those every year. Every year I have 1 or 2 picks after like the 22nd, 23rd pick. Like I had Bateman going a couple of years ago to the Ravens. I thought that was a lock. So I had Bateman a couple of years ago. I had Smith this year to the Cowboys. And that's it for the player to team match. Now, what I did was I went on huddlereport.com, and Huddle Report tracks all the major big boards, all the major mock drafts for like hundreds of entries from across the web. And it's everyone. It's not just ESPN or Fox Sports. It's all the podcast, all the mock drafts that submit, all the big boards, top 100s. So I went with their scoring process, in which players matched to team correctly, got 2 points regardless of draft position, and players predicted in the first round got you 1 point. So Sam, you had Walker and Neal correct, +2 each of those, so you had 4. And I had Hutchinson, Olave, and Smith. So I had 3. So I won that portion of it 6-4. Okay. Good for me.
Respect.
Good for me, yeah. But and then we went to players predicted in the first round. Now the players predicted in the first round, I had 13 players picked with my selections that were correctly first round picks. Sam had 14 correct of the players that he picked with his odd picks. So for those keeping the tally at home, and I know Sam just did the math in his head and is a little repulsed, I won this year's mock draft challenge with 19 points and Sam with 18 points. So it was close.
At least it was respectable. I had the feeling when you first got on the call, even before we started the show, you were smiling like, oh no, did I get blown out in this whole process? But oh man.
It was close.
Point.
It was close. Now, for the record, aside from all those red X's by all our picks, the only picks that we had in the first round that were incorrect, I had Willis going 20th to the Steelers. I had Arnold Ebiketie, going 28th to the Packers. And I had Kyler Gordon going 30th to the Chiefs. So for me, that's 3 wrong. Sam, you had Andrew Booth Jr. going 25th to the Bills. And you had Boye Mafe going 29th to the Chiefs, the edge rusher out of Minnesota. All of those picks, 4 of those 5 picks were second-round picks. Willis was the lone third-rounder, for what that's worth. I'm a little disgusted. But, yeah, Sam.
You're telling me I didn't predict Cole Strange would go 29th overall?
Oh, man. And you know what? We didn't talk about Cole Strange. We didn't talk about the Patriots. I would have loved to give another loser in this job, but we both would have one of us would have absolutely said the Patriots. Oh, yes, because they you know, I know that Bill Belichick sticks by his board and they believe whatever they believe, and that's that. But the Patriots don't have really good drafts often, and that shows on the field. That's shown particularly in recent history. They're just not quite right without the GOAT. They took Cole Strange, 29th overall. I had him at 107 on my board, and to give you an idea of how bad that pick actually was, Sean McVay and the general manager for the Rams, I want to say it was a live podcast show or something that they had going on during the draft.
Yeah, some kind of live post drafting or something like that.
Some live show maybe that they had going on. When that pick was made, not only did they both laugh, and it wasn't just like oh man, oof, what a bad pick. Oh no. Like they were LOLing. They were like, ha ha ha, like a Christmassy chuckle. Okay. Just laughing their asses off at these guys. And then Sean McVay goes, oh man, they took him in the first round. I thought he would be there for us. I think at 104 or 103 was their pick that round. And I think that was their first pick of the draft. Matter of fact, you know what? Let me go look. 104. he was like, "Oh man, I thought Cole Strange would be there on the board for us at 104," and they just started laughing some more. And then people who are in the background, whatever media people are laughing, just clowning the Patriots. I'm glad this is where we are, okay? Because I was tired as someone living in New York. I was tired of seeing the New England Patriots just dominating every year, being Super Bowl contenders every year. You know, as a Knicks fan, as a Yankees fan, you know, Buck Boston, they can suck it. All right. Right? Whole city. Everything about Boston. You can't make in the city. Everything is a circle and a left-handed turn. It disgusts me. Boston, you suck. And you know what? New England, you suck too. Take a Tyquan Thornton, second round.
That was the worst pick of the two. That was the worst pick of the two, I think.
Because you know what? Cole Strange might end up being a good starter. And in that system, the way they develop offensive, he might be a very good starter at guard for the Patriots. But Tyquan Thornton, yuck. Just gross. Marcus Jones, a corner from Houston, rugged player. I had him a little bit higher on my big board than when they ended up taking him. But he's 5'8". He's going to be a return man mostly for them. They've got their whole secondary. All their corners are slot guys. They're very slotty. I don't know how I'm feeling about this secondary right now.
They took back-to-back slot corners. They took Jack Jones right after taking Marcus Jones.
And they took Pierre Strong out of South Dakota State. No issue with the prospect, but did you really need another running back? You got 5 other running backs who are going to play every game.
New England could go down to like the local bar, grab a guy out of the bar, and play him at running back, and they'll get 500 yards for them every year. Like, they don't need to draft running backs that highly.
Oh, but they drafted 2 running backs, okay? Because then in the 6th round,
they doubled down.
Running back Kevin Harris. Butt cheeks. My only pick that I liked of theirs was Chasen Hines. Chasen Hines, they took him in the 6th round, guard from LSU at 210 overall. I had him at 132nd on my big board. That's the only pick I liked. Other than that, I don't know what Bill was doing. I don't know what they're doing. They got too cute. Where's my boy at? Pineapples, all right? Derek hates it. I hate it. We're disgusted.
No, this was... I don't even know. Like, I don't know what to even say for this draft class. It was just so out of left field to everything they did. It never got better.
Just bad, and then worse, and then it kept getting bad. Just the worst. But, Sam, I think that's it. I don't think I have anything else. Do you have any other thoughts, questions, comments, concerns?
I think we covered all our talking points for today.
Woo! All right. So with that in mind, thank you folks for sticking with us. I want to thank the Gregs for chiming in, both of them. I want to thank who else was here? Oh, of course. How could I forget Joe? Joseph Michael, thank you for tuning in. Horace, thank you for tuning in. And here we go. A little love from Greg number 1. Good show, guys. Thank you, Greg Arecki, for chiming in. Check in next week for next week's show. Again, any questions, comments, concerns, ideas, topics you want us to cover, let us know. Put it in the comments box. We will post it, and we will discuss. Sam, you're on Twitter. What is your handle?
Hey, you can follow me at Sam_Teets. That's TEETS 33 on Twitter. Or you can get access to all my content. I post up there frequently from my newsletter, Sports Talk with Sam Teets, which is on Substack.com. And I post stuff 3 or 4 times a week, including, if you're asking about the 2023 draft, a player watch list with 315 names on it. So if you want to get a head start, if you want to start watching guys early, go ahead and check that out. It's going to be near the top of my Twitter feed. So feel free to go look that up.
Sam is ready for 2023. I love it. It's because he knows the Steelers are butt cheeks, and he's got a plan.
I am looking forward to the 2023 NFL draft.
Steelers, worst team in the division, Sam, this year?
Depends on how long Deshaun Watson's suspended for. Because they're third there. At least they're third. They're third at the very best. They are third. So.
All right. So
you can always count on Cleveland.
Sam's
you can always count on Cleveland. Yes, I am disgusted, but you can always count on Cleveland to help you out. So maybe
I love it. All right, so the Steelers are butt. That's what Sam said. I didn't say it. Let's go Pittsburgh. I am on Twitter and on Instagram. It is at DB Talking Sports. D as in Dan, B as in Bob. Give us a follow, give us a like, share this episode, comment, hit us in the DMs. We will respond. They are PG, so don't worry about any tomfoolery on that front. And I recently posted an article on thegruelingtruth.com. It is the Detroit Lions 2022 NFL Draft Review, where I go over all their picks, all their undrafted free agent signings, and tell you where they might fit in the roster and how I feel about them, some analysis and info. So check that out on thegruelingtruth.com. And to close us out, I want to remind you guys that betting.net is not just sports betting. Betting.net compares the best online casinos as well. So sit back, relax, and play the top online slots, poker, and table games over at betting.net. So for Sam Teets, I'm Dan Kornhauser. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll catch you guys next week.